Welcome to another episode of JewishRing.com, the show, and today is I'm really excited for this episode because this is the very first episode that I'm having a guest and we're not Skyping or Zooming, that we're actually doing it in person, which has several benefits for everybody out there. One, that I don't have to worry about technical glitches, difficulties, or otherwise with Skype, Zoom, or anything else with the internet. Two, is we actually get to drink the same thing at the same time. And three, that we get to develop a rapport. I've actually never met our guest today before tonight, who is, and you're probably wondering who's our guest tonight, which is Rabbi Eli Simpson, who is a Magi Shiur at the local Lubavitch Masifta, which is basically 11th grade-ish, yep, 11th graders, and he's a rabbi, he's a teacher there. So tonight we are drinking vodka, so if you're curious what is in the glasses, it is not water, although unless you want to call it vodka water, you can do that. So first we have to kick off with l'chaim.
So it's like a bracha?
Yeah.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'akol nהיה b'dvarim.
Amen.
Chaim l'bracha.
Yeah. And for the historians out there, I haven't had vodka straight in many years, so I'm clearly a whiskey guy. But I'm happy to do, in the spirit of talking about Lubavitcher Hasidus, and tonight we're actually, or for this episode, we're talking about drinking in Hasidus, and so drinking in Hasidic thought. So I don't even know where to begin. Rabbi Simpson, how does drinking appear in Hasidic thought?
Hasidic thought, which is based on Kabbalah, is one of the fundamental aspects of Hasidic thought and Kabbalah is the concept of the 10 attributes of Hashem, God's 10 attributes, 10 powers, 10, as it were, through which Hashem created the world, 10 ways in which Hashem expressed himself in the creation of the world. The first two of the attributes are Chachma, which is wisdom, and Bina, which is understanding, two components of the intellect. Mm-hmm. So interestingly enough, Chachma is actually connected to water, and Bina is connected to wine. Okay?
Wow.
Now, wisdom, understanding, the two words seem synonymous, right? They both have to do with the intellect. Mm-hmm. But Hasidic thought explains that there's a very big difference between the two of them. These are two steps in the development of an idea, of an intellectual idea which enters a person's mind. So when an idea enters someone's mind, it first begins off as a flash of insight. Now this flash is not something that the person fully grasps when it enters his mind. Right? He's been thinking about this problem for a long time, focusing, and all of a sudden, boom, he knows that he knows it. But he does not yet know what he knows, right? So Chachma is the entry point.
It's not been fully processed.
Exactly. It hasn't been developed, it hasn't been structured. Chachma is that power in the soul which connects a person to that far beyond the intellect from where ideas enter the mind. In fact, Chachma is the ability for a person to completely set his entire consciousness aside, which is necessary for a new idea to enter the mind. Creatives know this, that they have to completely lay themselves, as long as they're self-conscious, there's no way for new ideas to enter their mind. So Chachma, actually the same letters as the words koyachma, which is the power of wat. Wat being the perfect word in Hebrew to symbolize nothingness. You can. There's a famous analogy to explain this idea. There was once a professor who placed a chair on the table and then told his class, "Prove to me that the chair doesn't exist." Right? So the people start writing furiously. They all give it in except for one guy. He writes 2 words on the paper, hands in his paper. Everyone else fails except for this guy. 2 words. What chair?
Okay.
Right? As soon as you start proving that the chair doesn't exist, you're already dealing with a chair. What? The concept of what means that I don't even know what's going on over here. There's nothing here yet tangible. Koyachma, the power of what, is the power to completely lay yourself aside to allow for the insight, for the new insight that enters. So that's Chachma. Bina, on the other hand, is like from the word boneh, which means to build, where you're taking that initial insight of Chachma and building it into an entire structure, an entire building, as it were. So Chachma and Bina, Chachma is connected to water. Water is something which doesn't have taste. something which is formless, something which is like vodka. It's clear, right?
Yeah.
And whereas Bina has, Bina is wine. Bina has taste. Bina has, alcoholic effect.
Properties, yeah.
And it's actually enjoyable, right? The person takes it and internalize it, understands. That's what understanding is. Understanding is taking this idea and developing it into a way that I can grasp it, that I can actually internalize it and have it touch me. So whereas Chachma is I'm going out of myself, I'm just making myself receptive. Bina is where I'm drawing that insight down into myself. So the idea of wine is the idea of contemplation, understanding, internalizing. Chaim.
Chaim indeed.
In Hasidus we say that David HaMelech says in Tehillim, he says, "Ulashayni eit sofer," which is that my tongue is like the quill of a scribe. When somebody's talking for too long, he doesn't dip his quill into ink.
That's clever. I like that. You gotta take a pit stop.
You gotta take a stop of it once in a while. So, Chaim. Let's get back to these two ideas of Chachma and Bina, right? Wisdom and understanding. These are two components of the intellect. Now, the intellect. There's a third one, which is Das, right? Which makes up Chabad, right? Chachma, Bina, Das. Okay, but we'll leave that aside for now, for various reasons.
Okay.
But this is all the first part, which is the intellect. Now, a person really has two general worlds that exist inside a person's psyche. There's the world of the intellect, Chachma, Bina, and the Das, which you mentioned, and then there is the world of the emotions, which contain emotions such as love and fear, which are the two primary emotions, as discussed in Chassidus and Kabbalah.
Okay.
And then various other secondary emotions. The emotions they develop from the intellect. The emotions are the quality of the emotions is measured according to the intellect. So, for example, you'll see that a child who understands very little, his emotions, he's excited or she's excited about things that are trivial. Right? They get excited about the lollipop, about the little toy, because their intellect is not fully developed. So therefore, their emotions are not driven towards, deep things. So the intellect is what determines the level of the emotions. Now, in order for emotions to derive from the intellect, Chachma is not enough. You need Bina. When you have this ephemeral idea, which is just like floating out there, which you haven't fully grasped, it doesn't really touch you. It's not really talking to you. It's only when you fully understood it, when you've kind of internalized it, when you've taken that wine, when you've had that yayin, right, which actually has a taste, that now you can actually make it part of you, and it can actually affect your emotions and inspire you with a feeling of either love or fear, whatever it is. Now that's why the Gemara says that the word for wine, yayin, has the same numerical value as the word sod, which means secret. Nichnas yayin, I'm sorry, very good, 65. Nichnas yayin yotza sod. When wine enters, the secrets come out. The secrets, those are the emotions that are going on in a person's heart. So the bina, the understanding, which is the yayin, that's what brings out the sod. That's what brings out all of the emotions that are found inside the person. So wine is definitely very, very significant in internalizing ideas. In Hasidic thought, the two most important aspects are love of Hashem and fear of Hashem. Right? Those are two primary emotions. In order for a person to have those emotions, he has to first contemplate on the greatness of Hashem. He has to utilize his chacham and his bina. He has to take, and most importantly, he has to have the bina, he has to have the wine, because he's got to bring it home. He's got to make it meaningful to himself. If he doesn't make it meaningful to himself, it's just an idea that's out there that doesn't arouse me with any feelings of love and fear for Hashem. So, I'm talking a little too long. I'm going to say l'chaim.
Okay, l'chaim. There we go, l'chaim. How is it all just wine mostly serve as a metaphor in Hasidic thought, or
so there is obviously the
and is it mostly just wine, by the way, beer, vodka, and otherwise don't really factor in. Wine stands in as like a metonym really for all alcoholic beverages?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I have this, my personal idea that that's why we drink vodka in Chabad, because that's kind of similar to water. It kind of looks like water. So we're trying to like tap into that chachma aspect. That's just my...
It's a nice drop.
Hasidus actually emphasizes the importance of water over wine in certain contexts. Like, for example, we find on Sukkot that there was this special joy associated with the pouring of the water on the Mizbeach. Whereas all year round there was the pouring of the wine, on Sukkot you had the pouring of the water. And the Mishnah says that Misha lo yira simchas beis hashiyeva, right? It's brought down.
Has never seen simcha in their life.
Whoever has not seen simchas beis hashiyeva has not seen simcha in their life, which is kind of like, it's a little counterintuitive. You would think that the ultimate joy would come from the wine, right? All year round, but it doesn't, right? It actually comes from the pouring of the water. What's that all about? The explanation is that, like we said, the wine has to do with understanding, things making sense, things being internalized. The joy that comes from that is a joy that's limited according to my understanding. The more I understand, the more excited I get, the more happy I get. The joy that's associated with the water is a joy that comes from my self-nullification to Hashem. When I nullify myself completely to Hashem, as in the power of Chachma, Koyach Ma, there's no me. Right? I lose my consciousness entirely. I give myself up entirely to Hashem. So now my joy is unlimited because it's Hashem's joy that I'm experiencing. That's why the ultimate joy is the joy of the pouring of the water.
That's a big piece that comes up in the Tanya, right? The nullification of the self.
Yes,
right?
yes. The importance of Chachma. That's why Chachma is the first attribute, because the only way for the infinite light of Hashem to be able to be, so to speak, contracted into attributes is only through this interface of Chachma, where you have an attribute. On the one hand, it's an attribute, which means that it's somewhat limited, but on the other hand, the entire essence of the attribute is its self-nullification. So Chachma is very, very important in Tanya, as is Bina, because it's all about bringing it home. Bina is what brings it home. The wine is what brings it home. That's what makes it meaningful to me. And at the end of the day, that's what counts. Yeah. So.
How is does vodka or beer play much into Hasidic thought, or really wine is really just the stand for that?
Not really. I think that wine is really, even in Hebrew, in halacha, for example, vodka is called yayin saraf, right? Like the burning wine.
Burnt wine, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So yayin is kind of like that all-encompassing theme. I don't know that yayin, means only wine, even though in some places it's explained that the reason that wine has this quality to reveal that which is hidden inside is because wine itself is something which is contained in the grapes, which is actually hidden in the grapes, and was itself revealed from its hidden state. Right? But somehow I think it kind of encompasses all alcoholic beverages.
How does I don't know if you want to go with it. How does Hasidic thought around wine play into interface with Jewish practice, halacha? I know we're really focusing on the thought tonight, the philosophical aspects of wine and Hasidus. Is there, whether it's just the wine itself, I know that's where you were headed, but also even just the sort of the more activity of drinking, the conceptual aspect of wine, sometimes the water being over the wine, sometimes when the chachma predominating over the bina. All right, cool.
We actually find that in the Gemara there's a concept that's called yayin mozug, which is when we take wine and we mix in some water. In fact, sometimes we put 2/3 water, as much as 2/3 water and only 1/3 wine, or even in some cases 3/4 water and only 1/4 wine, because the bina has to be founded upon the chachma. There has to be that foundation of self-sacrifice, that foundation of I just completely give myself up to Hashem, and on top of that, I can have my understanding, the wine. It could make sense. If the foundation is the wine, if the foundation is just what makes sense, then we're going to end up in the wrong places.
And so when it comes to the Passover Seder, so in the Mishnah when it talks about the Mazigas Yayin. So you're saying there's a significance and importance to that water that Chachman being added to that Bina.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah. In fact, when it says that Yaakov brought Yitzchak wine, it says Vayavi lo yayin vayesh. He brought him wine and he drank. So it's explained. I think it's maybe Targum Yonason, I'm not sure. Who explains that the Ramile Mayo Chamra, that he put some water, yayin vayesh means he mixed the water with the wine and he gave it to the drink. It's very significant to mix the water. You got to always mix the water with the wine. You can't let your mind run away with you. It has to always be founded on that foundation of Kabbalah Sam Malchus Shemayim, accepting the yoke of heaven, which is the water. The interesting thing that Hasidus also talks about two different types of wine. Okay, there is the white wine and the red wine. Okay. So there is.
I'm ready for more vodka.
Absolutely. There is the white wine, which is called Yayin HaMesameach. That is the wine which brings joy. And then there is the red wine, which is called Yayin HaMeshaker. That is the wine which makes someone drunk. Okay. Now, if you've ever had the white wine or red wine, you know that there's a very, very different effect. That the red wine is somewhat heavier, that could send your head turning, right? Whereas the white wine is just a much smoother.
Right. There could be more sugars with the red one. It could be.
I don't know, sugar, sulfites, I don't know what it is, but there's something there that I'm like allergic to red wine. White wine works, red wine sends my head flying all over the place.
By the way, as soon as I said the sugar thing, I'm sure someone's going to comment, red wines don't always have more sugar, white wines get whatever, but I'm sure someone out there is going to correct me.
So the white wine, which is the wine that brings joy, again, like we said, wine has to do with bina, right? Contemplation, understanding, making something personal to me in a way that it actually touches me, that I can actually internalize it and grasp it. So there's one type of contemplation that leads to joy. That's when a person contemplates the greatness of Hashem, Hashem's wonders, and he's drawn to connect to that, right? So he's actually inspired. He's so excited. Like, look, this is Hashem to whom I am connected as a Yid, and this really, really inspires me to study Torah, to do mitzvahs with passion, with excitement. That's the Yayin HaMesameach. Then there is the other type of wine. That's the Yayin HaMeshaker, the red wine. The red wine, that's where a person contrasts his lowliness with Hashem's exaltedness. Wow. And where he says, Hashem is so great and wonderful, but I'm so lowly, I'm in such a terrible state, look what I've done, look where I am, etc. And he becomes embittered, he loses
despondent.
Like,
it's like giving
right?
up.
He becomes like drunk, he becomes almost like depressed over how far he is from Hashem. And that's the wine, that's the Yayin HaMeshaker, the wine that makes a person drunk, which is a necessary step in serving Hashem. Sometimes it's appropriate for a person to feel deep feelings of remorse and regret.
Does that connect to the pasuk in Mishlei about don't look at the wine ki
Yayin.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a connection there.
There is a pasuk which says Tnu
Shechar La'oved
Nefesh, like the Mori Nefesh. Tnu Shechar La'oved, the Yayin the Mori Nefesh.
The Yayin to the Mori Nefesh, because you wouldn't give beer, which is bitter, to someone who's already embittered of spirit.
Okay, I'm a little suspicious if Shechar in that pasuk means beer. I don't know if it. I think
that's for another conversation. Why the 20 plus times Shechar appears in Tanakh could possibly be beer. That's for another conversation.
Okay.
But that's my read, by the way, that pasuk.
Really? How about Yayin Shechar in the Torah?
When
the Torah says Yayin B'Shechar Al Teish.
Yeah, it's supposed to be some sort of, it could be date beer, but yeah, something of that, like, or really anything that is not wine that gets one drunk, right? It doesn't have to be a barley-based product, but something that's...
Well, there's actually a difference in law
provision. Right. There are
something which makes a person drunk, which is not wine.
Right, that's true.
Okay.
But for Tanakh purposes, but at least in this pasuk in Mishlei, I read that verse as you don't give the embittered person, the Mari Nefesh, you don't give them the bitter product, you give them yayin, because it sweetens their embitteredness.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's how I understand that.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I guess in the context that I'm discussing, it could be like you want to take him to this really, really dark place that completely
Really go dark.
go all the way there, get it all cleansed, get totally regret everything, and then you're ready for the for the yain hamasameach, for the one that brings joy. So
And then, so this is kind of like white wine, right? Because this really isn't about getting drunk. It's really about the simcha. This is more about simcha. That's why it's Everbringans,
Absolutely.
L'chaim,
L'chaim.
L'chaim indeed. Wait.
When we were saying l'chaim,
Yeah.
right? So you may have noticed that you said l'chaim, I said l'chaim v'levracha.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, most Hasidim, in fact, I think most from Jews, would respond with l'chaim tovim v'l'shalom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
L'chaim v'levracha, l'chaim tovim v'l'shalom.
Hmm.
And in fact, the custom of saying l'chaim tovim v'l'shalom goes back a long way. The reason for that is brought down is because the first time that wine appears in the Torah is actually with Noach, right?
Yeah.
And
Very
it had
rare.
some very negative consequences.
Potentially.
Yeah, I think actually it was.
So,
However
which
you
by
read
the way, you can check out that episode where we talked about what did Cham do to Noach. That's a whole totally separate.
Either way, it wasn't
separate
good.
episode. Well, something bad happened out of it, and clearly alcohol was involved. But how the outcome was bad, but how bad was Noach's actions? I think is a totally separate
that's
decision.
an excellent question.
Right.
So let me
Sure.
let me move back. Let me rewind, and then let's get back to Noach.
Yeah.
Because in fact, the Medrash says that the Eitz Hadas, right?
It's in Bracho. It's actually in Bavli Bracho.
Right. That the Eitz Hadas was wine. Eshkol
According to
Shalom Sachtaloi.
According to Rabbi Meir's position in that Bracha.
Okay.
Bracho,
So
yeah.
according to one position,
Yeah.
the Eitz Hadas was actually grapes.
Yeah.
Right. Wine. So in fact, the very first sin of since creation was had to do with wine. And
With grapes. I mean, Rabbi Meir is clear in that Bracha that it's grapes.
well,
Because they didn't have time to
Sachtaloi, it
ferment.
says she squeezed.
Uh-huh.
Right?
It doesn't automatically ferment.
She wasn't feeding him grapes. She was squeezing the grapes.
Okay. All right, go for it.
So it's actually brought down that Noach was trying to rectify
What Adam
what
Rishon.
Adam had messed up.
Mhm.
Yeah, but he failed.
Yeah.
Okay, he failed as well. And then we find with Lloyd also had negative outcome. So we find a lot of negative things associated with wine. Therefore, when we say wine,
Although, I think the nations of Ammon and Moab would disagree. They'd say, we wouldn't be here if it didn't happen.
okay, point well taken.
It's all a matter of perspective. They would say we wouldn't have been here.
Well, in fact, you can take it a step further and say that that actually David HaMelech would not have been here, and Mashiach wouldn't be here if not for that, right?
Yeah,
Because
you really wouldn't go all the way
roots,
back, right?
right?
Yeah.
And Nama, Rus and Nama Hamoinis, Shlomo Melech descendants, and Mashiach comes from those.
Mm-hmm.
So there were some negative consequences of the wine. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, when we say l'chaim, we say l'chaim tovim u'l'shalom, that this wine should be good and peaceful, shouldn't bring to any negative consequence. That's the reason why people say l'chaim tovim u'l'shalom.
Yeah.
In Chabad, we say l'chaim v'levracha, right? Why do we say l'chaim v'levracha? There's an interesting anecdote that's told that the Maggid of Mezrich, who was the teacher of the Balatanya, who was the founder of Chabad Chassidus, he would say l'chaim v'levracha. We don't know why he said it, but that's what he would say. He would say l'chaim v'levracha.
Okay.
So one time, the Alter Rebbe was sitting with his Chassidim and Farbrengen, and they said l'chaim, and the Alter Rebbe said l'chaim l'bracha. Now this was the first time that the Chassidim had heard this expression, and after the Farbrengen, they were sitting among themselves discussing why we use such an expression l'chaim l'bracha. One Chassid, an elder Chassid, said that the word v'levracha is v'leiv raka, a soft heart.
Oh, soft,
right? L'chaim v'levracha, leiv raka. Now, why are we wishing each other leiv raka, a soft heart, when we're saying when the emotions come out? That's a dangerous time, right? The person's got to make sure that the emotions are guided, that they're properly focused, If the emotions get out of control, it can take a person to all kinds of negative places, right? So when we're saying l'chaim, and it's nichnas yayin, we want that it should be leiv rakab, leiv the heart. That's the seat of the emotions. We want to make sure that our emotions are soft. We don't that the wine doesn't get us to any anger. Doesn't bring us to anger. Doesn't bring us to
anything belligerent. You want to be
all kinds of
good stuff,
negative things that can come out when we say too much l'chaim. So in general, whenever there is self-consciousness, whenever there's consciousness of self, whenever a person feels themselves, and a person's kind of like, he feels his I, his ego, there is cause for concern, right? That's why we said that the bina has to be tempered by the chachma, which is that bittul, that self-nullification. So in fact, whenever there is yayin, there has to be l'chaim b'bracha, there has to be leiv raka, there has to be we gotta make sure that it's going in the right direction. In fact, when Mashiach comes, it says that we're going to have then the yayin hameshumar, right? It's going to be this ancient wine, the guarded wine. What does it mean, the guarded wine? It's explained that it's yayin hameshumar ba'anavov. That means wine, it's guarded in its grapes, like it hasn't been squeezed
punctuated,
right?
Punctured,
it's this wine which has not even been revealed. There's absolutely no consciousness of self. When Mashiach comes, the world is going to be filled with knowledge of Hashem. We're going to lose ourselves in this amazing understanding of godliness, and that's going to be the expression of that yayin hameshumar ba'anavav. It's going to be a type of wine that's not even felt. It's like we don't. It's a wine which, rather than bringing out our emotions, we can become completely subsumed in that. So,
wow,
yeah,
cool.
All right.